Picture a lone rider on an endless plain, 1,000 miles from any sign of life. It is dawn across the steppe, and the sea of grass stretches to the horizon like green water. He is grimy, wrapped in hides, barely awake in the saddle, and at his waist hangs a small golden tablet. That tablet ranks among the most powerful objects of the medieval age. It guarantees that in the coming valley, strangers will offer him a fresh mount, a bowl of steaming mutton broth, and a seat beside their fire, asking not a single question. He carries a dispatch, and that dispatch will traverse an entire continent, from Pacific shores to Europe's gates, faster than any message has ever traveled in human memory. For millennia, the great civilizations of Earth existed as separate worlds. China scarcely knew of Persia. Persia barely knew of Paris. Between them stretched deserts, mountains, and bandits who made the highways a fatal gamble. Then, within a single generation, a people who built no cities and left almost no writings tore down the barriers between those realms, stitching them into one. They forged the largest land empire history has ever seen, or likely will ever see. And in that act, they accidentally invented the interconnected world. This is the tale of how the Mongols wove the planet together. It is a tale of golden highways and open bazaars, and of the dreadful cost that accompanied connection, for the very roads that bore silken ideas would one day bear something far, far deadlier. With AI, we have recreated this lost world, its felt cities, its horse lords, its markets alive with a dozen tongues. So you won't simply hear it, you will stand within it. Before we ride onto the grasslands, if you appreciate this kind of deep exploration, please take 1 second to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and hit the notification bell. It genuinely supports the channel's growth and alerts you the instant the next era drops. Now, let us return to the world before the storm. There were no cities here, no fields, no walls, no monarchs in stone palaces. Only grass, sky, and animals. The Mongols were pastoral nomads, and their entire civilization moved on the backs of 5 creatures they called the 5 snouts: the horse, the sheep, the goat, the camel, and the cow. These beasts were everything. A family's wealth was counted not in gold or land, but in the herd that walked beside it. Home was the jur, the round felt tent you may know as a yurt, a lattice of wood, a crown of roof poles, and a thick felt covering pressed from sheep's wool. A family could dismantle the whole dwelling, load it onto 3 camels, ride to new pasture, and have it standing again in roughly 2 hours. Step inside and the smell greets you first. Wood smoke, animal fat, and the sharp tang of fermenting milk. The diet came almost wholly from the herd. In summer it was dairy, cheese, yogurt, dried curds that kept for months, and above all arag, fermented mare's milk, faintly alcoholic, consumed by the bowlful all day long. In the cold months came the meat, usually boiled mutton, eaten with the fingers from a shared pot. Both men and women donned the deal, a long, heavy-belted robe with felt boots and a fur-lined cap against a wind that could kill. And here is something that would have astonished a visitor from Paris or Baghdad. Women managed the household economy. They milked, made felt, drove wagons, and oversaw everything when the men were away. A Mongol woman could own property, refuse a marriage, and speak in council. She enjoyed astonishing freedom by the standards of the 13th century world. But do not romanticize it. One harsh winter, one drought, one raid by a rival clan, and a family could lose everything within a week. For centuries, the Mongols were nobodies, a scattering of feuding clans on the map's edge, paying tribute to the great Chinese empires to the south. Nothing about them suggested they were about to conquer the world. Then one man rewired the entire society. He was born around 1162 with the name Temujin. His early life reads like a survival saga. His father was poisoned by rivals when he was still a boy. His own clan abandoned his family to starve on the open steppe. He was captured and enslaved in a wooden collar, and he escaped. From that pit of powerlessness, through decades of alliances, betrayals, and warfare, he clawed his way to the top of the steppe world. And in the year 1206, at a great assembly of tribes beside the Onon River, the chieftains proclaimed him Genghis Khan, a title meaning something close to universal ruler. But his true genius was not on the battlefield. It lay in how he reshaped his own society. For his entire life, the fatal weakness of the steppe had been tribalism. Loyalty to clan and blood kept the Mongols fighting each other rather than the world. So Genghis abolished it. He broke up the old tribes and reorganized every fighting man into a clean decimal system, units of 10, of 100, of 1,000, of 10,000. And he mingled men from different tribes into the same units. Thus a soldier's loyalty could no longer flow to his clan, only to the Khan. He promoted commanders on merit, not birth. A Gothard or the son of a defeated enemy could rise to lead 10,000 men if he proved capable. In a single generation, he had transformed a chaos of feuding clans into the most disciplined, mobile, and loyal organization on earth. That is the machine that would go out and swallow the world. What followed was one of the most staggering explosions of conquest in history. In a few decades, Mongol armies erupted from the grasslands in every direction, into China, Central Asia, Persia, Russia, all the way to Europe's edge. At its peak, the empire covered roughly 9 million square miles and ruled perhaps a quarter of all humanity alive. It stretched from the Korean coast to the Hungarian plains. It remains to this day the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen. And it was built in part on terror. The Mongols offered every city the same bargain: submit and be spared and taxed, resist and be erased. When the city of Nishapur in modern-day Iran killed one of Genghis's sons, in law, the Mongols returned and put the entire population to the sword. Chroniclers say they stacked the severed heads into pyramids outside the walls. Separate piles for the men, the women, and the children. In the year 1258, Genghis' grandson Hulagu sacked Baghdad, the shining jewel of the Islamic world. It was said the Tigris River ran black for days. Black with the ink of countless books, hurled into the water from its ruined libraries. The numbers ancient chroniclers give are almost certainly exaggerated, and modern historians shrink them dramatically. But the horror was real, and the terror was deliberate. The Mongols wanted their reputation to arrive before their armies did, so gates would swing open at the mere rumor of their coming. This is the Mongol we think we know. The horde, the destroyer, the punishment of God. But that reputation hides the stranger, more important thing they did next. Because once the killing stopped, they did something no conqueror had done before. They opened the roads. Historians call what followed the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace. For roughly a century, from China to the Black Sea, a single authority held the highways. And the Mongols, from a poor land that produced almost nothing of value, understood what the rich, settled empires never had. Trade was not a luxury. It was survival. A people who imported nearly everything learned to revere the merchant and built a machine to move him safely across the largest space, ever governed by one power. That machine rested on 5 pillars. The first pillar was the Yam, the imperial relay network, the true nervous system of the empire. Across thousands of miles, the Mongols built relay stations roughly every 25 to 30 miles. A single hard day's ride apart, each stocked with fresh horses, food, and a warm place to sleep. A rider would gallop into a station, leap onto a rested mount, and be gone. By leapfrogging fresh horses, a message could travel up to 200 miles in a single day, a speed the Western world would not match again until the railway. At its height, the system ran on tens of thousands of horses, backed by oxen, mules, carts, and riverboats, and in Siberia's frozen north by dog teams pulling sleds. It was, quite literally, the internet of the 13th century. The second pillar was that little gold tablet we started with, the paisa. This was a passport, one of the Mongols' quiet gifts to the modern world. A guarantee stamped by the empire itself, carried by any envoy or licensed merchant. Show your paisa, and any subject of the Khan, anywhere, was obliged to give you food, fresh horses, shelter, and safe passage, or answer with his life. For the first time in history, a traveler could carry his own safety with him across a continent. All in a single piece of engraved metal. The third pillar was money, and here the Mongols were startlingly modern. They did not merely tolerate merchants, they went into business with them. Through partnerships called ortok, Mongol nobles entrusted vast sums of capital to merchant associations to trade on their behalf, sharing profits and, remarkably, sharing risk. It was something very close to venture capital 700 years early, with early ideas of loans, liability, and investment built right in. To grease it all, the Mongols introduced paper money on a scale the world had never seen. A note backed by the Khan's authority that you could carry in a pocket instead of hauling a mule load of coins. The fourth pillar was order itself. The old Silk Road had always existed, but it was a gauntlet of hostile kingdoms, tolls, and bandits, where a caravan might be robbed a dozen times or simply vanish. The Mongols swept all of that away. Under a harsh legal code remembered as the Yasa, banditry on the imperial roads was punished with savage certainty. Tolls were slashed and taxes standardized, so a trader knew in advance exactly what he owed. It was enforced with an iron fist, but it was peace. It was boasted, perhaps with some exaggeration, that a young woman could carry a sack of gold on her head from one end of the empire to the other, and never once be touched. And the fifth pillar was the strangest of all to medieval eyes: religious tolerance. In an age when Europe was burning heretics and launching crusades, the Mongols simply did not care which god you prayed to. Their law exempted the priests of every faith from taxation, and Genghis and his heirs supported Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and Taoists side by side. The rule was blunt and pragmatic. Worship whatever you like, so long as your loyalty to the Khan comes first. It was not tolerance out of tenderness. It was tolerance as a tool of rule, a way to hold 100 peoples together without holy war tearing them apart. Put those 5 pillars together, and the world grew smaller. For the first time, a single connected zone ran from China's Pacific coast to the Mediterranean. And people, goods, and ideas flowed across it as never before. Nowhere captured this more perfectly than the Mongol capital, Karakoram. Imagine a walled town rising straight out of the empty grassland. Inside its walls, the entire world in miniature. There was a quarter for Muslim merchants and their markets, and a quarter for Chinese craftsmen at their workbenches. There were a dozen Buddhist temples, 2 mosques, and a Christian church, all within the same walls. A Franciscan friar named William of Rubruck, sent east from France in the 1250s, walked these streets and could barely believe what he found. Hungarians, Greeks, Armenians, Georgians. A woman from the French city of Metz captured in a distant war. And most astonishing of all, a goldsmith from Paris named Guillaume Boucher. Boucher had been captured years earlier, when the Mongols stormed a city on Europe's edge and hauled him some 7,000 miles across the empire to serve the Khan. In the courtyard of the imperial palace at the center of the steppe, this Parisian craftsman built one of the great wonders of the age, an enormous silver tree. From 4 silver lions at its base poured streams of the fermented mare's milk the Mongols loved. 4 serpents coiled up its trunk, and from their open mouths flowed wine, mead, and rice liquor. At the very top perched a silver angel with a trumpet. At a signal, a servant hidden inside the tree blew a pipe. The angel raised its trumpet, and the drinks came gushing out as if by magic. It was a message to every visitor. This empire could pluck the finest craftsman from your world and set him to decorating its wine table. And it was not only people who moved. Along those roads, the inventions of half the world crossed between civilizations. Gunpowder, paper-making, and printing traveled west out of China. A Mongol monk born near what is now Beijing journeyed all the way to Europe and dined with its kings. A young Venetian named Marco Polo went the other way, deep into the empire's heart, and returned with stories his neighbors refused to believe. The Mongols did not invent these things, but by tearing down the walls between civilizations, they let Eurasia share its knowledge for the first time. That was the upside of connection, but connection cuts both ways. A road that can carry silk can carry anything. And in the middle of the 14th century, that same open network, those same protected caravans, those same busy ports, carried something no pirate could stop and no Khan could command. Somewhere in the grasslands of Central Asia, in the burrows of the steppe, rodents the Mongols had lived beside for centuries. A bacterium had always waited. In the old isolated world, it stayed put. But now there were roads. And when the fragile balance of the steppe broke, and infected fleas came down toward the trade routes, the plague did exactly what the silk had done. It traveled. It moved along the arteries of the Pax Mongolica, west and west and west, until in the year 1346, it reached a Genoese trading city on the Black Sea called Kaffa. Then, under siege by a Mongol Khan of the Golden Horde, from there, on merchant ships fleeing the sickness, it slipped out into the Mediterranean. You may already know what happened next. It was the Black Death, the deadliest pandemic in recorded human history, and it would kill perhaps half of Europe's population within a few years. And it rode into that catastrophe on the very roads the Mongols had built to carry their golden age. The greatest achievement of the age of connection had become the highway for its greatest disaster. Progress had handed the world a gift, and hidden inside it all along was a curse. The empire itself did not outlive its golden age by much. Genghis's descendants had quarreled bitterly over the throne for generations, and the vast realm had already splintered into 4 great pieces. The Yuan in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde on the Russian steppe. Now, as the plague hollowed out their populations and their overprinted paper money collapsed into worthless ruin, the Mongol grip began to fail. By the year 1368, the Mongols had been driven out of China, and one by one, the Khanates dissolved into the very lands they had once ruled. The greatest empire in history came apart almost as quickly as it had come together. Today, if you travel to the Orkhon Valley in central Mongolia, you will find almost nothing left of Karakorum. The capital of the world, the city of the silver tree, is now a field of waving grass and a few carved stones. A great stone turtle sits alone where a palace once stood. The fountain is long gone, and you can only see it now as an image on a modern Mongolian banknote. But the feltjurs and the deal robas, those you will still find exactly as they were, in the camps of herders who move with the seasons across the same grass their ancestors did 800 years ago. And that little gold tablet, the paisa, was one of the world's very first passports, the distant ancestor of the document sitting in your drawer right now. The Mongols are remembered as destroyers, and they were, on a scale that still stuns historians. But that is only half the story, and it may well be the less important half, because these horse lords from a poor and frozen land did something no empire had done before them. They connected the world. They took a planet of isolated islands and, for one brief and violent century, made it one. They gave humanity its first taste of a global age, and at the very same moment, its first great warning. The same roads that carry wealth carry disease. The same openness that spreads knowledge spreads catastrophe. Connection is power, and connection is danger, and you never get the one without the other. We are still living inside that lesson today. Every time a new idea crosses the whole planet in a single second, and every time a new sickness does the very same thing. We are living in a world the Mongols first sketched out from the back of a galloping horse. If you rode all the way out here to the edge of the steppe with me, thank you. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe, drop a like, and ring the notification bell so you never miss the next era we bring back to life. And there should be another video waiting on your screen right now, so let it carry you into the next chapter of the story. I'm Tim, watching the past so we can understand the present, and together, we keep history reborn. I'll see you in the next era.